What brings me joy is probably working with kids.
Writing brings me a lot of joy.
I love anywhere that's a new place I'm ready to go.
Using my talents to help others.
Being able to connect with people.
Playing trumpet.
Being able to express the way I feel about God with other students and not just like my home church. It's like really like refreshing.
The big question for this project is, how do we help young people receive the gift of Christian joy? To the question, what is joy? Joy is a deep and powerful emotion. Joy is connected to euphoria, to ecstasy even. Joy seems to accompany glimpses of the divine. We feel it in the air. We sense it in our bellies, in our bones, in our hearts. Joy speaks deeply to who we are as human beings. Joy is a gift. We don't so much earn it as we are surprised by it. Joy comes upon Christians as they are surprised again and again, it turns out, by the fact of their belovedness. In worship, they discover how Jesus lived for them, died for them, was resurrected again in order to jumpstart a new creation. And this surprise elicits joy. If you string together enough punctuating moments of joy, what you wind up with is a life of joy, a disposition to joy, not just a momentary feeling, but a joy that lasts. Joy becomes a way of life. And that's the root of the kind of resilience we hope to shape in young people. A sense that if I am beloved, and if I'm reminded of this frequently enough, my life will turn in the direction of joy and hope and faithfulness.
So I find joy when I'm having like stimulating, like intellectual discussions about God and about who He is, or like an aspect of Him.
It's just amazing, and most definitely I find joy when I'm worshiping during church services. I just love lifting my hands and just feeling the Holy Spirit, allowing the Holy Spirit to just engulf me.
And it's amazing because everybody is like one thing in mind, which is praising Jesus, and it's just, that's where I find the most joy, and I feel happy when I can just be myself.
Adolescence is a moment of great passion where the boundless love of young people can be met by the infinite passion of Christ. Christian worship is one space where young people can practice receiving the joy of the living God. Young people are disposed to worship. They're primed for it. It's a dimension of their passion. When they're given the opportunity, joy pours forth.
If you think about adolescents and younger, part of what is happening in them is development of frontal cortex and various parts of the brain and neural pathways. But what we know, or what some theorists argue, is that our bodies know things before our brains do. And so part of what I wonder for adolescents and younger is what happens when we train their bodies into habituated practices of worship, whether that be to raise hands in praise, to kneel for confession, to stand for pardon, to turn for reconciliation, to bow heads for prayer, that those are ways that our bodies are teaching us. And then along the way, young people will deepen their understanding of what that means, and they can perhaps more fully engage in joyful worship because there is a holistic understanding.
When young people successfully make this connection, when they participate in the presence of the living God, their joy becomes a gift to the rest of us. They remind us that we're Easter people too. Jesus isn't just snoozing over there in the tomb, that Christ is alive, His resurrected power and presence are available to us. One thing I've noticed in nearly 30 years of youth ministry is that public leadership in worship can be deeply transformative. When you get close to the source of worship, you sense that you are mediating tremendous power. You become a vessel of God's grace. Even if your task is doing something you've not paid much attention to prior, like reading from the Bible or leading a litany. Once you've done it, once you've led it in front of others and God in worship, you'll never go back to it the same way.
Part of what I have been helping students who are planning to work with young people in ministry settings is to think about how to incorporate increasingly or fully young people into worship. Not that we are gearing our worship toward them in some marketing consumerist sort of way, assuming that what they want is to be entertained, which I don't think is true, but instead to teach them the order of worship, the moves that our bodies make, the words that we say and why we say them, so that when they enter into that space, they don't come in as foreigners, they come in as full participants who can become increasingly able to lead in worship, so that what we see then is the movement of young people into leadership roles, right? That they may have already discerned a calling to be pastors or priests. And we can spot that in them and cultivate that vision for who God is calling them to be. That I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in the Lord's temple.
I see joy in the Youth Academy as a whole, but I see joy in the Youth Academy in the silence of morning prayer.
Mother, not my father, but it's me, oh Lord.
Throughout the week, they're getting to know each other, and they're talking, and they're sharing their stories, and they're learning, and they're discovering, and they're getting rubbed raw, and they're getting healed and getting balm put on their wounds. They gather together, and they think about all of those things in this liturgical worship. You may have a dance, or you may have a dramatic reading of scripture, or you may have written prayer that they've crafted themselves. And the juxtapositions of, like, this group of young people created a prayer that feels jubilant and almost silly, and this group of people created a reading of scripture that has a solemnity and a carefulness around suffering. They're holding these things together. They do this work over this worship service where they're working with the whole of the Christian church, the communion of the saints, so not just the present time, but throughout history, and placing this in this moment and saying the answers are not necessarily clear, but we know that God is with us, and we know that Jesus is real and with us. And this erupts in celebration. Even in the worship, the tension between hardship and suffering and oppression and brokenheartedness is met with this, but also there's more than what we can see. And for a moment, we're going to glimpse that. We always say we have an eschatological dance party. And it takes on different forms because each group has their own personality and talents that they offer. But it never fails to happen. They always break out in this embodied celebration of, wow, God is real. Jesus is real. The Spirit has moved me. And even when there is deep pain in the community or in our world, it doesn't fail to come up that God is real and among us, and that is cause for just a moment to glimpse this eschatological dance party.
We take young people seriously as consumers. We want their money. We market to them. We tell them what they need in order to be full and whole, and then we sell it to them. And that's a lie oftentimes. And it limits how fully human they can be. And Duke Youth Academy stands as a counter to that. It gives them a voice, or gives them a space to use their voice already. And what we see sometimes in young people is the gift of prophetic wisdom, that they have noticed things that we have become oblivious to. And so what that leads to is actions towards social justice that adults can then join in with. And what I'm wondering for young people and for adults is how there might be a deepening sense of joy in fulfilling our vocation.
Even when I was doing junior high ministry, I felt really strongly that anything adults could do, kids could do just as well. And there was no reason that if an adult can read the scripture, if an adult can hold the cup for communion, if an adult can XYZ, then why couldn't the young person? Getting to instill imagination in young people that they too are active participants in worship just like any other person that's there as a part of my work in the Duke Youth Academy became this deeply important piece of the work to me.
And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting.
One thing that one of my students is that he could ask questions there. Often in other spaces that he was a part of in church, there wasn't a space for him to ask questions. Being able to ask questions allowed him to grow in new ways that he may have not previously been able to.
We were listening to Dr. Ellen Davis, teach on creation. And they were, we were like a little worried that this group of students wasn't going to take lecture seriously because they were so interested in each other, which, that's great, but also we want people to take lecture seriously. And after a break, one of the students is running back from the bathroom because she stuck around to talk to Ellen Davis in the mini break that we took. And she said, "This is the best." So you have those moments where their enthusiasm to learn is just contagious. You're like, it is the best. It is the best that we get to do this today. So we're teaching them how to have deep reflective conversation. And we're teaching them how to cultivate an imagination of joy in their lives that connects what happened in worship in that sacred ritual to math class, to extracurricular, to mom nagging about not doing our chores correctly or taking too many naps. Connecting our family life and our work life, our school life, and our friend life to what we're doing in worship and why that matters. And so I think by asking young people those questions and being equal participants in those conversations as pew sitters, I think we equip them for deeper reflection in their life and a deeper definition of what joy means and what God's joy means for them.
Tapping into the joy that worship can offer means practicing the practices that mediate joy in worship, and it means including young people as full, conscious, and active participants in worship. We see this as a three-step process. First, preparing for worship. Second, practicing in worship. And third, reflecting upon our preparation and performance of worship. So what does it mean to prepare? Well, it certainly means including young people and their gifts, inviting them to be part of what we do, maybe again cultivating their gifts, shaping them, coaching them, mentoring their musicianship, their speaking, teaching them where to stand, what to say, what gestures are appropriate, how to project confidence and hope. So preparing is, in a sense, rehearsing, practicing what will then be performed. Second, we expect that they'll participate in what they have prepared for. They'll sing their songs, play their instruments, pray their prayers, project the confidence and hope that they have learned to project. Third, they're invited into either formal or informal processes of reflection, where they're asked, where did you sense God's presence in your worship participation today? How did God surprise you? How did you see the Spirit moving in the assembly? Sustain this threefold process over time, then preparation becomes more expert, performance more confident, and reflections more profound. Young people grow in their capacities to sense God in moments that they had not previously thought to look for God. In other words, sustaining this threefold process is what transforms young people into full, conscious, and active worship participants. Where joy is to be had, they will tap into it. That is to God's glory and to their greater flourishing.
We can bring so much joy, so much positivity, and we bring in so much of God's life, a light into what we do. We know how to use our talents to bring Scripture to life, to really just let the message be visual. So with whatever the theme is, whatever the message is, we know how to play it out in real life so you understand, so people can get a glimpse of God's true work and the love He brings.
Yesterday I was asked to carry the cross, and I felt like that was an honor, to be honest, to carry the cross and to put it down and to carry it back out. I really felt like it was an honorable position, and like I enjoyed the fact that they wanted me to do it, that they chose me to do it.
Adults are comfortable with us acolyting or with us reading scripture, but I think some adults are uncomfortable with us giving like sermons, because my church does Youth Sunday once a year, and it's kind of a chance for us to take over the service and just have it our way. And I think the adults like it, but they're very uncomfortable with someone who doesn't have an MDiv preaching. And I think that sometimes cuts you off from different perspectives.
The older people tend to be kind of stuck in one way, and I think we haven't yet to be we haven't formed our opinions as solid as they have, so we're still learning and taking in information at all times.
So the church has this great tradition of worship to pass on to young people, but we need to meet them where they are. The gifts that come to us out of the past need to be interpreted, improvised upon, innovated in relation to, in order for them to continue to breathe life and joy into the future. So that's what young people are positioned to do for us, to receive all the gifts of the tradition that we have to offer them, and then to spin them in new and fresh ways, to speak God's redeeming word, God's joyous energy for the future.
Even though you've grown and you're mature now and the way you think has changed, like just try to remember who you were and how you were when you were my age, and like be able to put yourselves in my shoes, because while you can put yourself in my shoes, I can't really put myself in your shoes because I haven't experienced what it's like to be an adult. I've only experienced up to this point. So I feel like if you could take a step back, then we can both take a step forward.
We've got the joy, 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 joy down in our hearts. We're down in our hearts. We're down in our hearts. We've got the joy, 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 joy down in our hearts. We're down in our hearts to stay. We've got the lead traveling to spiritual waters down in our hearts. We're down in our hearts. We're down in our hearts.